Hi everyone, welcome to Motorsport Muse for my very cold shed. Now in this episode we're going to talk about the most bonkers road car that ever existed. It was so fast and so potent that the manufacturer itself decided to pull it from production. It is of course the TVR Cerbera Speed 12. So that footage you've just seen was actually taken at Goodwood in 2000 by my dad, and it's, to my mind, at least on the internet, from what I can see, the only footage of this car in its original guise. I've got quite a close affinity with TVR. I grew up 4 miles from the factory in Blackpool in Lancashire, and normally if I was going to Blackpool I'd take a detour, go past the factory, and I'd always see Tuscan race cars and like new models being tested. But one day I went past and just in the workshop I could just see it looked like a Cerbera with a body kit and a huge wing on the back. Didn't know what it was, but in the press I started to see this car called the Project 712, which was their new prototype. Soon became the Speed 12, and this was their GT1 race car, so they were going to compete in effectively the World Sports Car Championship, so race at Le Mans. They'd compete against the McLaren F1 and the Mercedes CLK GTR. But in order to homologate the race car they had to build road cars, and the main difference between the two is the race car was restricted. It had an air restrictor, so it would have been about 650 horsepower, but the road car was completely unrestricted. Now the engine was two AJP6 straight 6 engines bolted together, so their own in-house engine, and it was basically a V12 7.7 litre normally aspirated engine, no turbochargers, no superchargers. The power output, they didn't know, so they put it on their dyno, which was rated for 1,000 horsepower, and it broke the input shaft on the dyno. So what they then did was ran it on the 2 separate banks of cylinders, so each bank produced 480 horsepower, so the combined power for the engine was 960, and that's in a car that weighed 1,000 kilos. And to put that into perspective, the Bugatti Veyron is 1,000 horsepower and it weighs nearly double what the Speed 12 weighs. So the initial interest at the motor show and at Goodwood actually generated some orders. So there were 5 deposits taken for the road car. The car cost about £250,000, which was by far and away the most expensive TVR ever made. And they got one prototype developed, which was the car that you see on the Goodwood video. And Peter Wheeler, the chairman of the TVR group, took it home one night to test it, and just in that one drive he realised it was completely unsuitable for road use. It had far too much power, it was far too potent. So the next day called a meeting and canned the project, but he wanted them to continue with the race car, so they parked all the prototype road cars and kept work on the race car. And they didn't race in GT1 World Championship, they actually raced in the British GT Championship, and I saw it race in the early 2000s at places like Donington Park, and it won a few races, but it's quite unreliable. And they started to take parts off these prototype road cars to put on the race car, so they ended up with one almost complete road car, which is the Goodwood car. That bodywork was broken up, so what they did was, well, we've got one car left, let's sell it. So in 2003 they put one of the GT1 race car bodies on that original chassis, and stuck it in Auto Trader, and it's so typical of TVR. No fanfare, you just stick it on Auto Trader, and the only thing they did was Peter Wheeler vetted each of the candidates to buy it just to make sure they were capable of driving it, and the car was sold. So there's now a Speed 12 out there with full GT1 bodywork, with that number plate from the Goodwood video, with that engine, I think it's probably that chassis, and it now resides in the Lakeland Motor Museum in the Lake District. So I actually saw it last year, and it's sat there, kind of pride of place actually. You can see it as you go in, or through the windows, and it's absolutely bonkers. And to think that's a road car, and in this era of hypercars which are easy to drive, so you think about the LaFerrari or the Rimac electric car, or probably the Mercedes, is it called the Project 1 or the one with the F1 engine? They're going to be easy cars to drive, and you cool actually probably just tootle down the shops in them, and they're efficient, and they're comfortable, and they're warm, and they're relatively quiet. Whereas the Speed 12, I mean, you'll see it in the video that to get in there's a huge roll bar here, so you have to duck under. You can see through the bodywork down out to the other side, and it's just a completely unforgiving car to drive from what I saw. So it's really one of a kind, and I don't, we won't see another car like the TVR Cerbera Speed 12. But what it also, it's kind of sad in a way, it's, TVR is no longer, I think, there was talk about TVR being re-established but not in Blackpool, different owners, but really that original manufacturer, they were just bonkers. Everything they did, the car designs were really out there. Door handle, do you want a door handle or do you want a button under the wing mirror to open the door? They were just very, very bonkers cars, and the styling was amazing. The engines were great. I have an abiding memory when I was about 15 where there's a road in Thornton near Blackpool called a Moundinous Way, and there was a TVR Cerbera came past me at about 140 mile an hour in a 40 zone, and it was just unbelievable as a 14-15-year-old kid. And you don't really get that sort of thing anymore with modern cars, that kind of visceral raw element that those cars had, and the Speed 12 had it in abundance. So an amazing car. Hope you enjoyed the video. Have a great week, and I will speak to you again soon.